Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Before we even get started today, just a quick reminder for you to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description, because today we have got a seriously fascinating one for you.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics we've covered in a while.
Right, so I want you to just imagine stepping onto the pitch at Ellis Park. You are, what, 6,000 feet above sea level on the high veld. Your lungs are basically already burning during the warm-up.
Oh, the altitude is brutal.
It really is. And staring back at you is a South African pack that weighs, roughly 1,000 kilograms. Oh, and your team happens to be on a devastating 4-game losing streak.
Yeah, which is just a nightmare scenario for any squad.
Totally. I mean, by all conventional logic, England is walking into an absolute slaughter today. But we're looking at this brilliant, really positive piece of tactical analysis today.
Yeah, by Nick Easter.
Exactly. And his analysis suggests that this losing streak, that feeling that the walls are completely closing in, might actually be the exact psychological weapon England needs to topple the world champions.
It creates a really just a fascinating dynamic, You have this unstoppable, settled Springbok force meeting an English side that, frankly, has completely lost the burden of expectation.
Which is such a wild concept to wrap your head around.
It is, but Nick Easter's breakdown is just phenomenal. He basically argues that you have to look past the surface-level panic of a 0-4 run. You have to understand the granular tactical mechanics of what actually happens when a team plays with zero fear.
And that is the core mission of our deep dive today, how hitting rock bottom creates this strange, almost dangerous advantage. And, on a purely practical level, we're going to explore how a team mathematically dismantles a functionally freakish opponent in the scrum.
Which requires a very sober look at England's recent performances, right? You have to strip away the emotion and look at the actual structural realities of the rugby they've been playing.
Yeah, let's start with that emotional layer, because England is landing in Johannesburg 4 defeats deep. The media is circling, fans are frustrated, Borthwick is under a huge microscope.
Oh, massive pressure on the coach.
Massive! Yet Easter says this is actually the best possible scenario for a trip to Ellis Park. I mean, nobody expects them to win. The pressure to, protect a winning streak or validate a new system, it's just entirely gone.
And that psychological reset, it just cannot be overstated. The immense weight that drags a team down during a losing run evaporates when expectations hit absolute zero.
Right.
Players stop gripping the ball so tightly they stop second-guessing their offensive reads.
It's the classic house money scenario. You're at the casino, you've already lost your original stakes, and now you're just throwing chips at the roulette board with total freedom.
Exactly.
But when you watch the replay of that recent game in Paris against France, the 48-46 loss, the immediate reaction from pundits was like, look at this. England's offense has finally clicked.
Yeah, they threw off the shackles and played champagne rugby. I heard that a lot.
Right. But is that actually true?
Well, the temptation is to look at that 46-point haul and assume England has suddenly evolved into this devastating attacking machine. I mean, it makes for an incredible highlight reel.
Oh, for sure.
But Easter's analysis is so sharp here. He issues a severe warning about reading too much into that specific match.
He practically begs fans to stop cheering for those 46 points, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Because the context is, it's incredibly misleading.
It really is. If you look closely at the tactical tape of that Paris game, France's defense was fundamentally disjointed. Their line speed, which is usually their greatest weapon, was totally sluggish.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't just England playing well.
No, the spacing between the French centers was too wide, and defenders were constantly biting in on decoy runners rather than drifting out to protect the edge.
And Easter points out that this wasn't necessarily England being unplayable. It was the French system breaking down. I mean, Scotland went out and put 50 points on that exact same French team.
Exactly. Which tells you the vulnerability was structural to France,
Right.
not uniquely exposed by England.
Right.
Furthermore, if you look back at England's other attacking highlights from this cycle, like the tries they scored against Wales, those line breaks only really materialized when Wales had a player in the sin bin.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, England was carving up a 14-man and briefly even a 13-man defensive line.
Okay, so the evidence that England is suddenly this lethal attacking force is built almost entirely on broken defensive systems and numerical advantages.
Pretty much.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Playing with house money is a great psychological boost, sure, but is a lack of fear really enough to break down a Springbok wall? because South Africa does not leave those French-style pockets of space lying around.
They absolutely do not. South
Okay.
Africa's defensive system operates on a completely different paradigm. It is notoriously hard, it's violently organized, and utterly ruthless.
Yeah, it's scary to watch sometimes.
They employ an aggressive blitz defense specifically designed to shut down the exact milliseconds of decision-making time that France was basically just gifting to England.
They suffocate the space before the ball even reaches the receiver.
Right. And what makes this particular matchup so daunting is the sheer structural solidity of the Springboks right now. I mean, they have picked close to their absolute strongest starting 15 for this match.
Which is practically a compliment to England, but a terrifying one. I mean, look at the spine of that team. You have Sia Kolisi, Peter Steph du Toit, and Jasper Wise in the back row, Eben Etzebeth anchoring the lock position,
It's a massive pack.
and Malcolm Marx, Ox Nché, and Thomas du Toit across the front row.
And you have to remember, these are men who have packed down alongside each other in the most high-pressure test matches on the planet for, well, a better part of a decade.
Wow, yeah.
They operate like a synchronized rowing crew. They micro-adjust to each other's weight shifts in the contact area without even needing to communicate. That level of cohesion is a massive, tangible edge.
But surviving that starting pack is only half the problem, isn't it? Because South Africa's entire game model is built around the mathematics of fatigue in the final 20 minutes.
The infamous bomb squad strategy.
Yes. Before we get into how England counters that, I want to quickly remind you to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description. We really appreciate your support. So, the bomb squad.
Right, so just as the opposition's lactic acid levels are peaking and legs are turning to absolute jelly around the 55-minute mark, South Africa swaps out their entire front row for fresh, world-class giants.
It fundamentally changes the pacing of a rugby match. If you are England, you aren't just playing against 8 forwards. You are managing your energy against 13 elite forwards over an 80-minute timeline.
And that is why Easter is so adamant that merely gaining parity in the first half is actually a trap.
A trap.
Yeah, if you go into the locker room tied at 10-10, playing a highly physical, attritional game, the mathematics of fatigue have already tilted in South Africa's favor. England has to bank territory and actual points early while their fast-twitch muscle fibers are still firing cleanly.
So we have a scenario where South Africa won't tire out normally and their defensive system won't gift you free space. Logically, England has to find a structural vulnerability. There has to be a crack in this fortress somewhere.
Easter's analysis points to 2 specific areas, actually. The first is the simple reality that this is the first hit out of the season for many of these Springboks.
Okay, so some rustiness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even with their long-term synergy, game speed cohesion takes time to calibrate, especially at the fly half position. Nick Easter hones right in on Manny Libbok.
Oh, Libbok. He is a mesmerizing talent to watch.
He really is. When the tempo of the game is high and the breakdown is fast, he plays with his head up and completely orchestrates the attack. But the international game is rarely played purely on those terms.
Right. His game management under severe physical pressure can wobble a bit.
Yeah, when a defense employs high line speed, the fly half scanning time, the fraction of a second he has to read the pendulum swing of the back 3, is violently compressed.
Think back to the World Cup semifinal against England. The conditions were wet, the defensive line speed was suffocating, and Libbok simply could not compute the spatial geometry quickly enough.
They literally hooked him off the pitch at the 30-minute mark. They had to bring on Andre Pollard because a pure running 10 was the entirely wrong tactical tool for a chaotic environment.
Wow, yeah. I mean, you cannot switch running expansive rugby on from a cold start.
No, it requires a rhythm. If South Africa clicks early, they will be unplayable. But if they are rusty, Libbok's decision-making under pressure is the primary entry point for England.
But here is where the mechanics of rugby dictate everything. To even get to a point where your line skate can pressure the fly half, you have to establish a platform. You have to solve a massive physics problem in the scrum. And this brings us to South African loosehead prop, Ox Nché.
Easter refers to him as a freak of a forward, which, in the tight 5 fraternity is the highest possible compliment.
It totally is. But I am struggling to visualize the physics of this, to be honest. Nché is 5'8". He is going up against English tight heads who are 6'3".
Right.
Shouldn't basic physics dictate that the taller, heavier man with a higher pivot point just folds him in half? How does Nché not just get absolutely crushed?
Well, it is a complete masterclass in exploiting leverage and biomechanics. When a taller tight head engages, their natural instinct is to angle downwards to exert pressure.
Makes sense.
But Nché uses that shorter 5'8" frame to get completely underneath the opposition's sternum.
Oh, so he's essentially a human wedge.
Precisely that.
Yeah.
He drives up aggressively off his inside leg.
Yeah.
By forcing that upward angle, he completely shuts down the channel the tight head wants to drive through. The tight head is physically forced to pop up to relieve the immense pressure on their neck and spine. And the brilliant part is, the taller the opponent, the more leverage Nché actually generates against them.
That is incredible. And he doesn't just do this in isolation, right?
No, he binds incredibly tightly with his hooker, whether that's Mbonambi or Marks, so that the entire left side of the South African scrum moves forward as a single hydraulic press.
Okay, so how on earth do you coach against that? You can't genetically shrink your tight head prop for one weekend in Johannesburg.
You target the only sequence where he is vulnerable, the engagement. The cadence of a scrum is crouch, bind, set. According to Easter, the true chink in Nché's armor exists in the microsecond of the strike.
The initial hit and the hook of the ball.
Exactly. Just before the sheer physical drive begins.
The moment of kinetic transfer. So if England's front row can disrupt that specific microsecond, if they can hit slightly offset or disrupt the timing of the hook, they neutralize that upward leverage. They gain parity.
Spot on. And parity on the high veld is a massive tactical weapon, especially in the final quarter, when tight test matches are decided by 1 or 2 scrum penalties.
If you deny South Africa that clean, penalty-generating platform, you keep the ball in play, and the game suddenly looks very different.
Which transitions perfectly into how Easter suggests England actually line up to execute this. Because he doesn't just diagnose the Springbok threats, he offers a highly specific and rather ruthless blueprint for selection and tactics.
Let's look at that selection, starting with the back row. Easter wants Henry Pollock and Ben Earl starting together. He calls it injecting dog and dynamism into the pack.
Yeah, you need ball carriers who can break the gain line through sheer explosive acceleration rather than just mass.
And crucially, he explicitly says to leave Tom Curry out of the squad. Save his mileage.
Which is so smart. Curry's already on tour. He's taken an immense physical beating over the last year, and there is absolutely nothing to gain by grinding his body down further in a game where England is playing with house money.
It's a very pragmatic view of player welfare, but his midfield selections are where Easter takes the hardest line. He wants Henry Slade dropped from the 13 jersey.
Yeah, he flat out says if you pick Slade at outside center against this Springbok team, England will get battered.
Which is controversial. Slade is a phenomenal distributor.
He is. He's a fantastic second playmaker who thrives when he has time to put runners into space.
Yeah.
But South Africa is not going to give him time. They're going to send Damian Dialande, who is a 110-kilogram wrecking ball, straight down Slade's channel over and over again.
It's a physics mismatch.
It is. Easter argues you have to fight fire with fire. He wants Tommy Freeman at outside center with Seb Atkinson inside him. You need robust, highly physical men who can aggressively meet South African ball carriers on the gain line.
Stop the momentum, Dad. And behind that midfield wall, he is absolutely adamant about starting Finn Smith at fly half. But here's where I want to push back on Easter's whole philosophy. Think about the viewer experience here. Easter is essentially telling Steve Borthwick to abandon the fun, loose, offload-heavy rugby we saw in Paris. He is calling for a strict kicking game, kick early, kick often. Is he genuinely just instructing England to play boring, negative rugby?
Well, it will absolutely look conservative, perhaps even boring, to the casual armchair fan. But there's a deep physiological necessity for it, tied directly to the environment of Ellis Park.
Ah, the altitude again?
Yes, the high veld is unforgiving. If you try to implement sea-level tactics, running the ball out from your own 22, engaging in multiple phases, your legs will completely flood with lactic acid. You'll be physically gassed by the 50th minute.
So trying to recreate that Paris highlight reel is essentially tactical suicide.
It plays directly into Jock Nienaber's defensive legacy. South Africa would happily watch England run themselves into exhaustion, wait for the inevitable handling error, and then strike.
Plus, South Africa themselves will likely play a very tight, kick-heavy territorial game in the first half to feel England out, especially considering their new attack coach, Tony Brown, is leaving for New Zealand.
Right. Easter notes that transitional coaching phases usually prompt teams to default to their safest, most conservative tactical routes. So England must match, that pragmatism.
But there's a massive flashing warning label attached to this spoiler strategy: discipline.
Oh, it is the single non-negotiable factor in Easter's blueprint. You cannot concede lazy penalties at the breakdown.
Because that thin air at altitude doesn't just affect the lungs, it affects the ball. With less drag, the ball flies significantly further. A penalty kick from 5 meters inside your own half is an easily makeable shot for South Africa.
You give away a cheap penalty for rolling away too slowly, and you are instantly punished with 3 points. It requires an almost monastic level of discipline from the English forwards.
Zooming out from the immediate tactical battle at Ellis Park, put yourself in Borthwick's shoes and look at the stakes if this free shot doesn't yield a performance. Because the schedule waiting for them doesn't offer any breathing room.
It is a remarkably brutal run of upcoming fixtures. Following South Africa, they face a highly physical Fiji side at home.
And as Easter points out, Fiji is a far more dangerous prospect than the average fan might realize.
Absolutely. And immediately following that, they have to travel away to face Argentina, a team that is comfortably operating as a top 5 contender right now.
So if England goes 0 for 3 across this stretch, I mean, the pressure on Steve Borthwick evolves from a media narrative into a genuine existential crisis for his coaching tenure.
The calls for sweeping changes would become deafening, which reinforces exactly why this 80 minutes at Ellis Park is such a rare, bizarre window of opportunity.
Nobody has England marked down for a win. You can throw tactical caution to the wind precisely because survival isn't expected.
A professional side with absolutely nothing to lose, armed with a clear tactical blueprint to disrupt, is incredibly dangerous.
It really is. But it raises a deeper philosophical question about where this team is actually heading. I mean, think about this. If England does manage to pull off a miracle at Ellis Park by playing exactly the way Nick Easter suggests, hyper-conservative, kick-heavy, spoiler rugby, does that actually help them build a winning identity for the modern game?
That is the million-dollar question. Does winning ugly delay the necessary tactical evolution required to consistently beat the top 3 teams in the world over a 4-year cycle?
It's a fascinating tension between short-term survival and long-term growth, and definitely something to keep in the back of your mind before kickoff. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this down in the comments. And please don't forget to subscribe to the Rugby Obsession YouTube channel and newsletter from the link in description.
Yes, definitely do that.
Well, thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we'll look forward to you listening to our next episode.